Dork in Disguise, Chapter 4. Cool! Jerry sprawled on his bed with his dog Sparserilla and stared at the page on his science magazine. Minutes before, he had been studying the most recent issue of the Ultimate Cool that he'd picked up at the drugstore. He had gotten bored, however, and replaced it with his favorite magazine, The Amazing World of Science. Learn about Newton's second law, it said on the top of page 23. Build a hovercraft and learn what factors affect the motion of an object. I could do that, Jerry murmured, stroking Sparserilla's nose. Sassy, which they called her for short, with a curious mix of terrier and spaniel. She lay with her head on her paws, her tail thumping the bed, ready as usual to spring into action if the situation called for it. Sassy was always eager for mischief. Jerry studied the picture of the hovercraft. That would be an awesome project, probably the kind of thing Stephen Hawking did when he was a kid. The famous physicist stared down at Jerry from the poster on his wall. Next to Hawking was a poster of Albert Einstein. These were Jerry's heroes. His bedroom door burst open and 6-year-old Melissa charged in, giggling, and threw herself on the bed. She was followed by her new friend Rachel, who stood quietly just inside the door. "Show us a trick," Melissa said. "I'm busy now," Jerry said. "We're bored," Melissa said, "and Mom's on the warpath." The paper carrier threw the paper in the bushes again, and it took Mom half an hour to find it. "Hey, how come you're not wearing your glasses?" "I'm trying to get used to not wearing them." "Can you see without your glasses?" "Not very well." How come you want to get used to not seeing?" "Leave me alone." Melissa scrambled off the bed and ran to the far wall. "How many digits?" she said, holding up her fingers. "What?" Jerry was still reading. "How many digits am I holding up?" Jerry didn't look up. 2. "You didn't even look. Go away, Melissa." "Not until you show us a trick. I promised Rachel you would." Jerry put the magazine down and sighed. "Okay." He'd been working on the science trick anyway, and he wanted to see if he could pull it off. "First, get me the bucket from the basement and a pitcher of water." "Come on, Rach," Melissa squealed. The girls ran out of the room. Jerry went over to the cardboard box where he kept all of the materials he needed for his science tricks. He pulled a plastic cup out of it, then went to his desk, picked up an index card, and slid it into his pocket. When the girls returned, Jerry said, "Put the bucket on the floor here, Melissa." "Okay, now you guys sit on the bed and watch carefully. I've been working on increasing the power of my mind," Jerry said dramatically. "I'm going to make the water of this cup do exactly as I say. The pitcher of water, please." Melissa giggled and handed him the pitcher. Jerry held up the plastic cup and poured it full to the brim. "An ordinary index card," he said, pulling the white rectangle from his pocket and holding it up. He placed the card over the rim of the cup. Then, slowly holding the card in place, he turned the cup upside down. "I order you water to stay inside the cup." Jerry carefully let go of the index card. The water stayed inside the cup. Melissa and Rachel gasped and clapped. After a few more seconds, Jerry said, I order you water out of the cup now." The water splashed out of the cup along with the index card into the bucket. "Wow, Jerry," Melissa squealed. "How do you do that?" "I told you," Jerry said, shrugging. "I've been working on the power of my mind. It's a very powerful thing, you know." "Amazing," Rachel whispered. "It's a trick, Rach," Melissa said. "Don't be too impressed. He never tells how he does it." "But it was fun, Jerry. Come on, Rach." Melissa skipped out of the room with Rachel close behind. Jerry smiled. The trick had worked perfectly. He'd drilled a tiny hole in the plastic cup yesterday. When he first read about this trick, with his finger over the hole, the water didn't fall because of the air pressure pushing up on the card was a greater force than the gravity pulling down. When he wanted the water to splash out of the cup, all he had to do was take his finger off the hole. That let in the air, and the air pressure was the same inside and outside the cup. Gravity took over and pulled the water into the bucket. His mother appeared at the door. "Jerry, there's a phone call for you." "You're kidding," Jerry said. His stomach fluttered a little. "No, I'm not kidding," his mother said. "And after you hang up, let me know. I need to call our paper carrier." "Okay," Jerry said, distracted. He couldn't figure out who would be calling him. He hurried into his parents' room and picked up the receiver. Hello? Flack. Brenda McAdams. She sounded excited, and Jerry was immediately curious. Hi, he said. Listen, she said, I was just watching TV, and there was this woman who rips jeans for the stars. She rips jeans? You've seen famous people on TV wearing jeans with tears and frayed hems? Yeah. Well, a professional jean distresser probably worked on the jeans to make them look that way. You're kidding. No, I'm not, Brenda said. Anyway, this woman gave up some tips on how to make jeans look lived in. If you want to, we could get together and I could help you rip your jeans in the coolest places and make them look worn out. That sounds good, Jerry said. Would tomorrow after school be okay? Yes, indeedly. See you tomorrow. See you. Brenda hung up. Jerry shook his head. He was amazed at how many details went into being cool. He had a suspicion that despite all his research, he was just beginning to scratch the surface of coolness. Everyone was seated when the bell rang, signaling the beginning of language arts class. Everyone, that is, except Gabe. He looped around the door a few seconds late and headed for the back of the room. Gabe, Miss Robertson said. You should be in your seat by the time the bell rings. Gabe grinned. I was in the bathroom. The girls giggled and guys smirked. Miss Robertson said, We're going to start the year reading short stories. Do any of you enjoy reading stories outside of school? Jerry made a move to raise his hand, but he realized what he was doing, and he put his hand back on his desk. 5 students raised their hands. Do you have a favorite author, Brenda? Miss Robertson asked. Ray Bradbury's my favorite short story writer, Brenda said. I love The Man Upstairs and The Dwarf. Those are excellent stories, Miss Robertson agreed. Bradbury's use of language is exquisite. Jerry glanced back and thought he was Robin, roll her eyes at Cinnamon. Bradbury was Jerry's favorite short story author, too, but he kept his mouth shut. I like short stories, Gabe said. The shorter the better, and the ones with lots of pictures. Hey, how come books we don't reread don't have pictures anymore? There were giggles from some of the girls. What a dope, Brenda murmured. She was facing forward so only Jerry heard her. Books without pictures are still filled with imagery, Miss Robertson said. A skillful author will use words to create pictures in your head. Gabe covered his head with his hands. That sounds painful, he said. The class cracked up. Miss Robertson was not amused. Gabe, if you have a comment, please raise your hand. He raised his hand. Yes? She asked. That sounds painful. Some of the kids roared with laughter. Jerry was starting to feel sorry for Miss Robertson. Gabe, Miss Robertson said, in the future, I hope your remarks add something worthwhile to the class discussion. You're not in elementary school anymore, are you? Gabe raised his hand. Yes, she said. There was an edge to her voice. No, I'm not in elementary school anymore, he said. More kids laughed. They seemed awed that Gabe would keep it up like that. Miss Robertson frowned and wrote Gabe's name on the board. Your behavior, Gabe, forces me to start using my check policy. One more smart remark, and I'll put a check after your name. That earns you a detention after school. Gabe continued to grin, and he shrugged. But he stayed quiet through the rest of language arts and social studies classes. He didn't need to push it. His status had risen with just a few wise cracks. After social studies, Gabe strutted out of the classroom surrounded by half a dozen admirers. Cinnamon walked along next to him, looking up at his face beaming. Brenda appeared at Jerry's side. Can you believe it? That guy's almost brain dead, and look at the attention he gets. You've got to admit, though, Gabe's cool, Jerry said, and funny. I think he's a jerk. A gorgeous, idiotic jerk. You think he's gorgeous? Sure, but then he opens his mouth and ruins everything. Yeah, Jerry says, but he was thinking maybe he could think of some funny things to say in class, too. Miss Robertson wouldn't like that, but maybe it would get Cinnamon to notice him. He'd have to think about it.